Hello again and welcome back. I am Jared Case, curator of film exhibitions at the Dryden Theater and the George Eastman Museum. And I'm going to have another conversation today with another special guest who's got a streaming recommendation for you at home. I am very happy to welcome to our little program here, Kelli Hix, who is another of my fellow graduates of the Selznick School class of 2002. Please welcome Kelli Hix.
Hi, Jared. It's so good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you too. How are things in Tennessee?
Well, it's been a tumultuous year, but right now things are calm and everything is really good.
That's good. So you are working in Tennessee right now. Can you explain a little bit about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and I work primarily on two different projects. My project here in Nashville is called the Audiovisual Heritage Center, and that is a special program of Metro Archives. And so we're the program with Metro Archives that preserves and provides access to Metro Archives' analog audiovisual collection, which is news footage, documents of town, like council meetings, Metro council meetings, home movies, a huge variety of footage. So we do that, but we also do a lot of programs to try to get the public really interested in archives and bring the public in. So every year we have an artist in residence and we support a local artist who reuses and remixes things from the collection to make a new piece. That's usually a live event, so that's we're still doing those, but we're gonna push the live events to post-COVID. So that's the project I work on here. It is a super innovative and super cool project. And then I also work part-time with the Community Archiving Workshop, and that is an international group of archivists who help people with audiovisual collections, like just to get started on preservation. So we work with artists, arts organizations, historic associations, radio stations, like anybody, but usually people who, usually smaller organizations who might not have audiovisual archivists on staff. So we do workshops. Now our workshops are online, and we are just getting started on an NEH funded program to work with tribal libraries and archives across the United States. So yeah, one of my projects is here in Nashville and one is kind of everywhere across the US.
So when you talk about Metro, is that Metropolitan Nashville? Is it a very local organization or consortium?
So so Metropolitan Nashville it's the first metropolitan government in the United States. I can't remember right now when that happened. I want to say late 60s, early 70s. So it was started as it's a repository for metropolitan history and documents. So the mayor's office, when there's a new mayor, for example, everything from the mayor's office goes to Metro. They have newspaper collections and photo collections. But around 2015, they remembered or re-remembered or refound all this analog audiovisual material that was in storage, not under great condition. And so they did the right thing and they started saying, like, advocating for it and saying, like, this is really important. And so I worked with them as a contractor on and off then, and now the program is funded annually by the Public Library Foundation. So this is a program of the Nashville Public Library and the Metropolitan Archives.
But that sounds fascinating, and especially since we've already talked on these conversations to Chris Austin, who's at NARA. It sounds like your job involves a lot of those same sort of government documents that you preserve, but also with Katie Trainer at MoMA, who is specializing in home movies. So you've got a lot of those as well.
We do, yeah. That's exactly right. And so we try to sort of balance the material that's more like research material, like recordings of meetings and things like that, with the more like eye-catching material, which would be more of the home movies and things like that. So we try to balance preserving both. We really try to keep the public interested and have our ear to the ground about what the community wants to do. So that's part of what makes it a unique program, is it's just so interactive with the people that live here, or that's what we're aiming for anyway.
And considering the history of Nashville and all of the music that goes on around there, and knowing about your personal experience and your professional experience with music, is there a lot of that to archive as well?
Well, this collection actually has less music related footage in it than there are collecting institutions here like the Country Music Hall of Fame who tend to collect more of the music history. So this is really more of the, we say we're collecting and preserving for the Greater South, Nashville and the Greater South. So it's more like, it's sort of like a regional archive as well as a government archive. But we definitely have some music related footage, especially of the Opryland theme park, which is a much beloved theme park here that is no longer here. So we do have some great footage from there and some street music festivals. There's a big history here of street music festivals, which have developed into some of the big festivals here today that bring like millions of people. Yeah, so there is some, but it casts a wider net than only music.
Is there anything in particular or in general that you remember from the Selznick School that you're bringing to these projects that you're doing?
Everything. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially the Selznick School, of course, when we were there, there was a stronger focus on analog because digital preservation was less developed than it is now. So I found that for as many people there are in music production and the music industry in Nashville, because of its history and its present state, there are not a lot of archivists here, not a lot of audiovisual archivists. So with a program this big, one of the harder, more difficult formats to work with in some ways is film. And so yeah, I did most of the film inspection, but then because we don't have a lot of that expertise in this area, and if someone's watching who does have that expertise, they should definitely write me because I want to talk to you. But I was able to teach a lot of people, not a lot, but a few of our interns, volunteers, part-time staff, film inspection. So it's not just what I learned at the Selznick School, but it's really one of the beautiful things is being able to pass it on, especially in a geographic area where there's just not as many people doing that work. There aren't programs that teach it. Yeah, so it's many of those things we've been able to pass on in the area as well, which is great.
I think that's really important. It's something that we've stressed here, and this is the 25th year of the Selznick School now. So we've been doing it for almost a full generation. And as we continue this education, the generations will hopefully continue to do the same thing and make sure that our audiovisual heritage is secure. And I think it's important that you give me those links for the projects that you're doing so that I can put them in the notes down at the bottom of the video and people will be able to find them there and follow to the projects, especially if they have one of these smaller collections that does need this kind of help.
Yeah, that's great. I would love that. Yeah, I'll absolutely send those out.
Great.
I do wish we had some of the film inspection tables that we had at the Eastman house. I have to say, teaching film inspection on on some smaller reels is a bit of a different ball game, but it's nice to have learned with the best and then bring that into whatever situation you find yourself in.
Well, that will put out a call for inspection benches too.
I like the French ones, just in case anyone has any of those laying around.
So I did reach out to you and ask to recommend a movie that you think people might enjoy while they're watching at home, waiting for cinemas to reopen.
Mhm.
So you chose an Agnes Varda film called Vagabond. Why don't you tell me a little bit about why you chose that and what you like about the
Okay. Um, I I chose it for purely selfish reasons because it happens to be a favorite film of mine, and I what draws me to this film is some of the technical storytelling
film?
techniques that Varda uses, which she is so known for, which is blending this documentary style with this fiction film style. She uses a lot of non-professional actors who play kind of a version of themselves in this film, and it adds uh, uh, just a sense of nuance to the film. I mean, I hesitate to say a sense of reality, but it it just has a feeling to it. You can tell that something mysterious is going on here that's not usual. Um, I'm also just really enamored with hitchhiking and living on the road and that kind of thing. And I can give spoilers out, right?
Well, we should probably give a little bit of a sense of what plot there is so that people know what to expect going in before you can't have spoilers for something you don't know what to spoil.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the film is about someone who is a vagabond and or as they say in French, does the road. So that's what they say in the film. Instead of calling her a hitchhiker, they call her someone who does the road, which I love because that gives you a sense that she's always moving. She never settles in. Um, there is there's a quote by Agnes Varda that says, I'm just trying to describe this character because this character is also one of the reasons why I chose this film. I think Varda said she stinks, she's contemptuous, and she never says thank you. And yet she's very endearing also. But it begins with a spoiler. The film begins with a spoiler. It begins with the dead body of the main character. So you know right away what's going to happen in the end. You know that there's no hope for her. And it almost has like a double beginning. So then it also begins with her coming out of the ocean and swimming in the ocean. So it's like a birth and a death scene at once. Um, but and then it follows this character Mona as she does the road, she hitchhikes around, she lives outside. And it also has this other narrative device in it in which the fourth wall is broken and the characters speak to the camera or to each other about their impressions of Mona. So we learn a lot about them through their reaction to Mona, and we also learn a little bit about Mona. And then it goes through sort of her adventures and eventual downfall, how she gets to this position where she is found frozen to death in a field. So that's the overall plot, if you will.
Yeah, it was. I love that you brought up your personal feelings for the film. As when I was watching this, I had a very personal reaction as well, but it was from the sense that I've had through films like The Killers or Akiru about how our legacy, each of our legacies, doesn't really exist outside of ourselves, but it exists in the people that we've had contact with. And so I love this structure where, you know, what lasts of Mona is what these people say, whether they're saying it to the camera, or they're being interviewed by someone else. It's that interaction. Even as people remember her, she still lives on in some way.
Yeah, and their reactions are so different to her. Yeah, I I mean, it's, I think it's maybe Sartre who said, hell is other people. And sometimes, and you know, that's like their impressions of her are all so completely different. Um, and yet we're put in the position where we're almost one of those people too, because then we get to see her and we get to make up our mind about her too. So it almost like puts you in the film in a way as one of these observers of this really unusual person leading a really unusual life. And it's interesting you say that. I thought a lot about that too. And I was like watching some extras from the DVD. And apparently Varda, in order to promote the film, she had like a flyers. It was 1985, right? And she had flyers that she would hand out with Mona's picture on them, and it says, "Would you pick up this person if they were hitchhiking?" And I was like, that's such a fascinating way to like put us into the film, and such a different way than most films treat rebellious heroes. You know, that really makes you ask that question: what do we really think of people living outside of society? We kind of heroize them when they're in film, you know. They're cool, they're like exciting, but when we meet them in real life, what really do we think? What really do we do, you know?
One of my favorite quotes about cinema is what Roger Ebert said, where it's a machine for generating empathy. But what's really important is how far the audience member is willing to go with that empathy. So I think that flyer idea really points that out, and asking the audience, would you interact with this person at all? Does your empathy extend to that person without knowing them before you get to know them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, Varda is really mixing up real life and narrative cinema in a way that is not like gimmicky at all. It's just so it makes the movie more effective, and it's very touching. So, do you think you would pick Mona up if you saw her hitchhiking?
I have had experiences where picking people up, whether it was when I didn't have my family in the car. I think it would depend on whether or not I was interacting with them individually, or if I had my family to think about. It's true.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would have when I was younger. I don't know.
Uh,
Today I might be more cautious too. But yeah.
we were talking before we started recording a little bit about Varda's use of the camera and her technique. As you mentioned, it's not gimmicky, but it is very effective in the way that she uses the camera.
I think when I think about the way that she uses the camera, the scene that really comes to my mind first is the scene in which Mona is she's had a downfall. She's lost a lot of the few things that she owns, and she wanders into this town. She wants to buy some bread, and they shut the shutters on her, and no one will, you know, sell her bread. And then there's this bizarre attack by a man in a costume covered in hay and sticks. And it's a terrifying scene, I think. Like, it is very emotional and very scary. And of course, this is all a game. It's part of like a festival in the town, this medieval festival. It's called Payas Day or something like that, I think. Um, and the shot that there's this shot, I think it's like a tracking shot as they're just sort of like attacking her out of nowhere, these huge guys with these bags of like the leftover ingredients from wine, so they're like whacking her, and it looks like blood, and the shot just kind of moves, and they're moving in and out of the picture, and she's moving and she's screaming, and you don't really know what is going on. You're just as shocked as she is. Like the way that tracking shot happens, and it's like so smooth. I think it's a tracking shot. It's so smooth, but then there's so much chaos. It really feels like you're right in the middle of that fight, and you almost wonder, like, how did the camera stay out of this situation? Because it feels so intimate. That's the shot that comes to my mind when I think about that in the film.
Just hearing you talk about it and thinking back on the film, uh, I get a sense, and I probably shouldn't bring anything up because I haven't gone back to check, but as we're talking about Mona and her movement, I feel like there's more camera movement when she's alone on film. Like the camera is more alive rather than when she's with other people, where it's sort of stationary, particularly when we're doing the interview sequences or the people who have met Mona are talking to the camera. It's very sort of, as you say, more documentary style, whereas the pieces where Mona is on the move are more cinematic, and it's got that movement to go along with following her where she's going.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now I want to rewatch the film and look for that, because when she's moving, the camera's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and when people are still, it's still, and yeah, it's that's one of those things that's very effective without your brain actually registering that it's happening.
Yeah, and the attack that you're talking about with the wine dregs, I think is what they called it, is paid off because that's set up in the beginning of the film. Just after they find her body, they're like cleaning the town and spraying this what looks like dried blood off the thing. You're thinking it's a much more violent action than it actually was, having to do with her death. When actually it's just sort of getting into a situation where you no longer have anywhere else to go.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I hadn't noticed that actually until I watched this in preparation for this viewing. Like, I remembered that that yeah, there are those shots. We see her dead, and then we see what looks like people cleaning up blood.
Yeah.
And it's also, they're also removing like the last clues at all that this girl even existed. Like there's nothing physical left of her life. As you said, it's just these impressions that other people have.
Yeah.
I think the impressions are so interesting to listen to too. Um, I Some people admire her so much. She has an effect on everyone, and some people think that she's dirty, and some people admire her, and some people want to be like her. Some people want to take care of her, but she's too outside of their world. Like, all of these characters that she meets are also really fascinating and reveal so much that we can imagine about themselves through her brief interactions with them.
One of my favorite scenes is when she meets an elderly woman who also doesn't really have much left. She's got a lot more physical things around her that belong to her than Mona does, but they connect on such a level that they end up laughing, and that's the time that you hear her laughing the most in the film.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful scene. And it also, she meets that woman, right, because she's sort of sneaking in. Like, she puts the maids, she's kind of made an acquaintance with the maid or caretaker, and she sort of sneaks in, and the caretaker can't the caretaker her relationship with her boyfriend isn't working out. Her relationship with her employer isn't working out. She feels kind of used by everyone. And then Mona kind of walks in, and with her, she's got this like kind of charm. She ends up making a friend, maybe partially because there's just no BS with Mona. She doesn't need anything from anyone. And she just kind of like, yeah, she ends up being the only person that this elderly woman is actually honest with about her life, and they have so much fun together. They kind of see each other, they in a way. And also, because the old woman's blind, she probably doesn't know, she probably can't make so many assumptions about Mona as other people can.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking that Mona was the only one in those scenes with the elderly woman that had any curiosity about her. They would ask her about the pictures and her life and try to learn more about her, whereas the people that are around her normally just sort of take her for granted. And they explicitly say they're waiting for her to die to get the house.
Right, absolutely. She treats her like a human. Mona treats the woman like a human being. Everyone else just wants something from her.
Mhm.
I mean, the couple that the all the characters are so amazing, even the ones that are unsavory. But the nephew, his wife explicitly says is in an earlier scene that she won't have sex with him until they have a nicer place to live. And so the nephew moves right in and is like, Auntie's gotta go. Like, everybody's gotta go. Like, we're gonna move in here right now. There's no treating her like a person until Mona makes people reflect on their lives. I mean, I think that's the main thing. There's something about her that sparks everybody to reflect, even us, as we were talking about whether, what our reaction about her would be in real life.
I get a little choked up just thinking about it. So I really appreciate you bringing this recommendation. And I heartily endorse everyone going out to see this film. It is streaming on the Criterion channel right now. As a matter of fact, did a little research. There's just a ton of Agnes Varda films that are on the Criterion channel, so you can go through most of her filmography if you're interested in going through that. So thank you, Kelli, for bringing that to us. And if you've got a few minutes, I do have a couple of questions to ask you. It's been so long since we've been able to get into the cinema for most of us. I've been asking people some questions about their history with cinema, and I didn't know if you would want to participate.
Of course.
All right, good. So what was your first cinematic memory?
My first cinematic memory. Okay. I'm not prepared for these questions, so they're going to be off the cuff. What comes to my mind? I don't know if this is my first, but this is an early one. For some reason, my dad and my brother thought it would be a great idea to take me to see Dune. And I remember seeing Sting in Dune, and my brother trying to explain to me that was the guy that was in The Police. And I was very confused, but also Dune as that's an epic movie to bring a little kid to, like all this pop culture like connections and how they're connected, I think exploded in my brain that evening when I went to see Dune. I don't know what I thought of the movie, but the fact that the guy from The Police was the villain on another planet was like, somehow I understood something about how pop culture works that day.
That is a wild experience. 2.5 hours of David Lynch sci-fi for a 10-year-old or whatever it was.
I don't know what they were thinking, but I feel honored that they thought that would be a thing that would be cool. So.
Was there a neighborhood theater or a theater that you went to often as a child that you have memories of?
We didn't really have that, but that had a very neighborhoody feel. I lived in a pretty small town in Indiana, though, so I would say going to the cinema was a huge deal and really important for connection during that time, pre-internet and all of that. We did actually, I'm remembering now, this is way back, but we did have a small local theater in our like town square. It was turned into a church when I was really young, but I think that I actually saw one film there. I think I saw Stir Crazy there. This is telling you something about my family. I think it was Stir Crazy. So we did actually, but by the time I was a little older and more like gonna pick up on that sense of community, it had been turned into a church. But still, yeah, the cinema was definitely like very important place for connection and coming together.
What is your favorite sensory experience about going to the cinema?
My favorite sensory experience. That's such a great question. Well, I don't know. I like rickety seats, I think. I think sometimes I kind of like bad seats. The other answer is more obvious, but I love popcorn. Like I really do, and I never get tired of it. So that's a less original response, but it's also very true.
I like them both. I think that the smell of popcorn is very evocative of the cinema. And I like the idea that there's this lived in quality or this sense of history of the creaky seats that uh, is more than just going to the movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it bring the misery of the creaky seats brings you together, I think. But of course, now I'm thinking of the big one, which is the super slow Dryden curtain that you raise and takes so long that it built up all of this anticipation for the film. Of course, that's the big one. That's the best sensory experience of all time.
That's a good
That's
one. You're the first one to say that. So,
really
yeah.
that slow curtain. It was just like you knew you were at the movies and something great was about to happen.
Where do you sit when you go to the theater?
I sit. I'm short, so I usually try to sit on an aisle so I can see. Uh, I would say middle front. If there's not a lot of people, middle front ish. Does towards
Somewhere,
the front in the middle. Not not like first row.
right,
Yeah,
too close.
too close. Yeah, that's for teenagers. That's some teenage stuff.
All
Put
right,
your feet
last
up.
one, less theater related. Is
Okay.
there a book that you would recommend that people pick up while they're home, either having to do with film history or with what you're doing, maybe regional cinema, something that people can use to expand their knowledge of film history?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many books. Um, hmm. Well, uh, I love the interviews with Herzog. I think it's Herzog on Herzog, and those are great for anybody to get into because he's such a charismatic writer and speaker. Um, and those are also a lot about life and cinema too, which I think is fitting for our topic today: the blending of the real world uh, and the stories that cinema tells. So yeah, Herzog on Herzog is one of my favorites.
That's a great one. It's very he and Varda sort of live within the same sort of cinematic geographical area in that they like to blend real life with their own life with the cinema. So just a lot of the documentaries that he's been making recently go off of his personal experience and he explores them in deeper ways.
That's true. I hadn't really thought about that parallel a lot, but yeah, it's absolutely true. And they both end up as their careers progress more and more on the camera.
That's true. That's a great point. Yeah. Interesting sort of parallels. I think we have a film series we're putting together here.
Oh, I'm all in. Yeah, let's do it.
And Kelli Hix, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and telling us all about Vagabond. And again, please give us those links and we'll put them in the body of the YouTube video here. And hopefully people will be able to find you and take advantage of these awesome classes and resources that you
Thanks so much, Jared. This is so fun to see you and to get to chat with you about movies again.
have. And we'll have to play the game, has Kelli seen this film, some other time?
I was definitely thinking that we'll have to do that. Yeah. Next time.
Next time. All right. Thank you so much, Kelly. We'll see you
Okay.
again.
Bye. Stay safe. Take care.